Your investors are here, and here, and here. But you're here. The EB-5 program creates jobs by bringing capital into this country and allows foreign investors an opportunity to come here. But connecting issuers and investors half a globe away has been a challenge. Until now. Introducing EB-5 Projects Live, a new call and talk show where issuers can pitch their projects.
We want to focus exclusively on this market segment and become the manufacturer of reference for premium motorcycles.
At Buy Chloe, we are redefining what it means to eat well.
Streaming live on the Livestream platform,
This project dates back 10 years.
investors can call in with any of their questions. EB-5 Projects Live is connecting issuers with investors half a globe away in real time. If you have a project you'd like to discuss, please contact us about being a part of the next EB-5 Projects Live.
Okay, that's fine. Hi, and welcome to our weekly news update and broadcast. The purpose of this program is to inform and educate not only the investors, but attorneys and their wealth advisors to make the most informed decision on their EB-5 investment. My name is Michael Gibson. I run U.S. Advisors. We are a registered investment advisory firm. We specialize in performing due diligence and analysis on EB-5 investments, the principles associated with these projects, regional centers, and we run the EB-5 Projects.com portal. So today's broadcast is the goal is to show viewers what's been happening in the industry, speak to experts in the industry so they can give us their thoughts and feedback. Today we are very, very fortunate to have with us Bernie Wolfsdorf from California. Bernie is well known to nearly everybody in the immigration community, certainly in EB-5. He's past president of ALA, and we're very, very fortunate to have him on. For those who are watching through their computer, you can see who Bernie is if you already don't know by going to his profile page under professionals. As well, you can look at his firm listing, and you can see all of the attorneys who are in the Wolfsdorf immigration firm. So today we're going to start off by introducing some news videos about what is happening related to our industry, not necessarily only with EB-5, but with immigration. Obviously, the Trump travel ban and what's been happening in the judicial system is top of the list. But beyond that, we're going to go over Bernie's own 5 points bulletin. So Bernie has issued a very detailed notice about what's the proposed rule changes are to USCIS. So we'll be discussing that. This is the notice from DHS. And of course, we'll be talking about the backlog with processing and how that's affecting people in the industry. And then there's some legislative issues as well. The Grassley-Feinstein bill and other things that we'll do related to what's happening in our industry. So let's start off by showing a few of the most recent videos, news videos related to the executive order and what's happening in the legal system.
This is an NBC News special report. Here's Lester Holt.
Good day from our newsroom in Los Angeles. We're coming on the air to bring you breaking news. A U.S. appeals court here in California has revealed its much anticipated ruling on whether the travel ban imposed by President Trump on 7 Muslim-majority countries can be reinstated after a district court judge issued a stay to keep the ban from being enforced. Let's go to NBC Justice correspondent Pete Williams. Pete, what's the ruling?
The ruling is against the government, Lester. It's 28 pages of ruling. What the majority of the court basically says is that the government hasn't shown that it's likely to prevail on its legal arguments. So what is the legal effect of this? It means that an order imposed by a judge in Seattle remains on the books. The government is still barred from enforcing the Trump executive order on travel from those 7 countries into the United States. The government had said before that if this would be the outcome in the Court of Appeals, it would almost certainly ask the Supreme Court to do what the appeals court wouldn't do, which is to say allow the government to enforce the travel restrictions. So I would expect, Lester, that within 24 hours or so, perhaps by next morning, the government will go to the Supreme Court and renew its request to try to get this order put on hold so that it can enforce the travel restrictions. We have not been able to read the 28 pages here. They just came out within the last minute. But basically, they say the government has not shown that it would, it has not shown irreparable injury. Now, that's court talk for the government hasn't shown that by leaving this temporary ban in effect, the national security would be that much damaged. That had been the crux of the argument here. The government had said that only the president can make these determinations, and when he does about the danger of letting people in from those countries, that can't be reviewed by a court. But clearly this court doesn't buy that, Lester.
But this court really had a narrow question to answer.
3 federal judges of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals grilling lawyers from the Justice Department and Washington State in a hearing by phone Tuesday night. Both sides fighting back skepticism from the court.
Either you have the evidence presented in the record or you don't.
The Justice Department attorney August Flingy arguing President Trump has the legal authority to impose a travel ban without court review, citing national security.
Are you arguing then that the president's decision in that regard is unreviewable?
Yes.
Judge William can be pushing back on Flingy's logic.
Could the president simply say in the order, we're not going to let any Muslims in?
That's not what the order does here.
Could he do that? Could he do that?
That's not what the order does.
Would anybody be able to challenge that?
That's not what the order does here.
Flingy acknowledging his argument might not be working.
I'm not sure I'm convincing the courts.
Judge Richard Clifton questioning Washington State's claim shows a direct intent to discriminate against Muslims.
I have trouble understanding why we're supposed to infer religious animus when in fact the vast majority of Muslims would not be affected as residents of those nations.
Your Honor, the case law from this court and the Supreme Court is very clear that to prove religious discrimination, we do not need to prove that this order harms only Muslims or that it harms every Muslim. We just need to prove that it was motivated in part by a desire to harm Muslims.
Do I have to believe everything you allege and say, well, that must be right? That's not the standard.
President Trump continues defending his hastily implemented ban.
Some things are law, and I'm all in favor of that. And some things are common sense. This is common sense.
While the president's new Homeland Security Secretary told a House committee he regrets how the presidential order was rolled out.
I should have delayed it just a bit so that I could talk to members of Congress, particularly the leadership of committees like this, to prepare them for what was coming.
Hi, welcome back. Okay, so those are the videos from the recent court rulings. I'm going to now introduce Bernie Wolfsdorf from California. Bernie, are you with us?
I absolutely am, and wonderful to join you today, Michael.
Okay, this is great. Now, I have to explain to the audience, you are actually broadcasting remotely. You're not in the office. You had some work to attend to remotely. So we don't have a video feed from you, but we do have you on audio. And we are so happy to have you. I always assume that people know who you are. Everywhere I go, everybody knows. But there may be listeners on this broadcast who don't know who you are and what your practice is about. For those who may not know who the famous Bernie Wolfsdorf is, could you please give us an introduction and let us know about you and what you do?
Michael, you embarrass me with that overstated introduction. You know, I guess if I have to talk about our firm a little bit, Wolfsdorf Immigration Law is headquartered here in Santa Monica. We have over 50 people. We also have a New York office. We provide a full range of immigration services, but we also have a heavy focus on EB-5. I don't often throw out these numbers, but the truth is that in the past 3 years, our office has filed over 2,500 526 applications that would represent $1.25 billion invested by my clients. So we're very active in this program. We also opening an office in Shanghai. We have employees there. So EB-5 is the name of the game, and thrilled to talk with you today, Michael, on some of the important developments. And certainly there's so much going on in this field.
Absolutely. So let's start it. And by the way, I should mention for our audience, this is a call-in show. So if you have any questions for Bernie, this is a great opportunity for you to call in with any questions related to any topic, EB-5 or immigration related. The phone number is 917-421-9919. If you're on our webpage on the portal, there is a link. You can also video cam through your Chrome browser. But Bernie, before we get to the changes proposed by USCIS, the proposed changes and your excellent 5-point bulletin to the industry on that, we have to talk about this executive order. What's happening with your clients who may be affected by it? What are you hearing? I know you're very closely connected with everybody in the immigration community. What are their concerns? What are you hearing and what are you seeing?
Well, the number one issue to comprehend is exactly what is this travel ban that was announced January 27. The first important thing to understand is that this ban is currently on hold. Therefore, none of the proposals that the government was going to introduce are currently in effect. So as of the present time, there is no travel ban. However, this matter is not resolved. As the president said, we'll see you in court. So the simple bottom line is that neither the district court nor the Ninth Circuit has focused on the fundamental issue of whether or not the president has the authority to do this. We're just talking about whether it's in effect or whether it's on hold. So it's currently on hold. But Michael, what I want to focus on, which is very important, is that these 7 nations that have been selected for the travel ban are obviously troubled areas. And the simple point is that in many instances, many of the investors in the EB-5 program, in fact, come from troubled areas. So if we're going to be banning people from troubled areas, this is going to impact the EB-5 program. And let's take, for example, investors in the EB-5
Sorry about that. Sorry, we have some little feedback in there. Let me just cancel that. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry, Bernie.
Not a problem. So, but just dealing with number one, Iran is one of the countries. And Iran is, I don't know if it's in the top 10 or top 15 in the EB-5 program, so that's significant. Iraq, Syria, these are countries from which high net worth individuals are to some degree selecting the EB-5 program as an option to immigrate. So point number one is that there are both I-526 petitions pending from people from these countries. There are I-526s approved, that is the initial petition. And what happened during the time that the ban was in effect is USCIS seized all adjudication of petitions. They were frozen, number one. Number two, people from these countries who had green card interviews, those interviews were canceled. Number three, people who have green cards from these countries were barred from entering the United States. So in regard to the travel ban in relation to the EB-5 program, let's use the word devastating. it had a devastating impact on those people. So if you happen to have invested a substantial sum of money, but it's also important to note that this is not a total ban. This was a 90-day temporary ban, and the purpose of the administration is to evaluate the threat levels and the security procedures. So my hope is, because I'm the eternal optimist, that the US government would continue to do this kind of evaluation and hopefully set up new procedures which would allow investors from any part of the world to invest. And the extreme vetting which the government is doing would continue to, quite frankly, make us safe. That is obviously an important priority. I believe that extreme vetting is already going on, but there's one other important aspect to look at the January 27 order, and that is this one, is that the US government is requiring those 7 nations to cooperate in order to get the ban removed. And the question is Iran, Iraq, and other such nations going to cooperate? So my biggest fear is that, in fact, these nations do not cooperate and this becomes a permanent ban. What's going to happen to the people in the pipeline? We honestly don't know. So that's my 2-minute version. I will point out that under Section 212F of the Immigration and Nationality Act, the president fundamentally does have the power to decide who comes into the US. So I can't tell you where this is going to end up. I'm the eternal optimist. My personal prediction is that this travel ban will not survive in the next few months, and people from these countries who have invested will continue to be able to immigrate, but do expect possible delays and enhanced security checks, which quite frankly, we've already seen.
Bernie, I understand we have a caller online for you, so could you please introduce the caller? Joe? Hello,
yes.
Caller, are you there?
Hi, yes, this is Joseph Barnett from Wolfsdorf, Rosenthal.
Oh, great. Hi, Joseph. Good. I know you know Bernie well. What's your question or comment?
Well, my question is for EB-5 clients from one of the countries designated in President Trump's executive order. You know, what do we tell them right now? You know, I know there's different timings that they may have in terms of where they are in the EB-5 process, but you know, what is the overall thing that we should be telling them in light of the fact that, you know, this ban, if ever put back, could be extended permanently?
Well, Joe, I think that's a really good question, and the fundamental question. And here's the advice: not only what should we tell them, is what have we been telling them? Because I've been getting these guys calling, emailing nonstop. We have clients from Syria, Iraq, Iran, calling in a state of panic. And here's what I'm saying to them. The great thing about America is that we have a wonderful constitution, we have a judiciary, and we do not allow religious discrimination. So on the positive side, I am optimistic that they will continue to be able to pursue their applications to completion. So that's point one. Point two, the advice that I'm giving folks is this particular battle that the president is fighting may take several months before we get a final ruling. At this point, we are only dealing with the TRO. We are not even the temporary restraining order. We are not even dealing with the fundamental issue of whether or not the president has the ability, the underlying issue, to restrict the entry of certain nationals. So it may be months before this issue is finally resolved. And what I'm saying to people is that if the door is currently open, which it is, they should continue to be optimistic. They should continue to pursue the American dream. And my belief is that they will succeed. So the advice I'm giving them is, if America is your country of destination, this is where you want to educate your children. I would continue to proceed with my application at this time, but certainly with no guarantees.
So, Bernie, let me now bring the case. We had last week on the program Sally Amir Gahari. She's one of your colleagues from just north of you, and she has a huge Iranian client base. Now, we were less certain of what was going to happen last week, but the question that we were discussing was for her, specifically for her EB-5 clients, where they are making such a substantial investment, and it could take years even before the adjudication. We don't know what will happen with this case. And I want to tie this into your policy memo, the 5 points, recognizing that there may be changes to the USCIS program, the minimum investment, some transparency and integrity measures. For those people who are affected, who are coming from these 7 countries, and as you rightly point out, that may be expanded. Who knows what the next countries could be. What advice do you give to a prospective EB-5 client who may be concerned that their petition may not be approved because they now come from a banned country, or they may come from one in the future?
Well, Michael, I want to go back and look very specifically at what the administration is saying. They are repeating endlessly that they are not banning Muslims from America. I do not believe it is legal to ban, I think there's 200 million people in these various countries. And there's Christians in these various countries, and other religious folks. Are you telling me that what they are anticipating is banning a Christian from Syria or a Jewish national from Syria from investing? And the answer is, I don't think so. And I don't think there's a blanket ban proposed against Muslims. So to answer your question very directly, and Michael, I know you're concentrating on my 5 points in the proposed regs. I want to mention 2 things. These regs were dropped by the Obama administration. The Trump administration is almost certainly going to come up with their own stuff, to put it in simple terms. They're not going to follow the Obama administration's regulations. So even though these changes, here you're looking at the US policy manual, there's some important points in here, and we can discuss some aspects of the new policy manual. I actually, this is stuff that happened in January. We're now in February. I actually want to look at a few new things, if you don't mind. I want to talk to you, for example, Senator Cotton in the Senate has already proposed a new bill, which quite frankly shows us the Trump thinking. Senator Cotton is from Alabama. Jeff Sessions, our Attorney General, is from Alabama. So here's what we're seeing as of today, and I think it's actually far more important than what the Obama administration was proposing. So let's look at a few of these things. Number 1, that bill proposes to reduce legal immigration, which is exactly President Trump's view, by almost 50%. That bill proposes to cut family immigration. That bill proposes to cut family immigration, to eliminate the DV program, but it does not touch EB-5. So the Cotton bill in no way touches EB-5. And I think it's very interesting that all this restriction, and we're now actually seeing legislation. Legislation is more important than regulation. Pardon the pun, but legislation trumps regulation. And we are seeing legislation move forward that in no way, what they do is they cut family immigration, they cut the lottery, and they may cut low skilled, but they do not cut the higher skilled, the best and the brightest. And therefore, it appears to me that possibly investors are in no way impacted by that. The other thing that I want to point out is that we have an April 28 deadline. We've had at least 12 extensions, maybe 11. And the program needs to be extended again. And the question is, what's going to happen April 28th? That's a really big one for me. What is Congress going to do in terms of legislation? Now,
hey, Bernie, I'm sorry to interrupt. By the way, excellent points. We have a caller on the line. Caller, could you ask us your question? Let us know who you are and ask us your question. Did we lose Joe? Did we lose the caller? Oh,
no, I'm here.
Hi, caller. Can you let us know who you are and what your question or comment is?
Sure. My name is Robert. I have a question, sort of what Bernie was talking about before, but we've seen a lot of EB-5 bills proposed in Congress last year, and nothing was enacted. How do you think the Trump administration will affect specifically the EB-5 program and the legislation for EB-5?
Yeah, great question. Thank you, Robert. Bernie, what are your thoughts?
Well, here's what I think. And that bill will be very similar to some of the things that we've seen before. So let me make some predictions as to what the new legislation to extend the bill. I don't think there's a possibility it'll be another short extender, but I have a few points with regard to what's going to be in there. Number one, I'm absolutely confident that we will see restrictions in the TEA, the Targeted Employment Area, that there will be changes in the current rule with regard to the TEA. But the important point is that while we will see an increase in the minimum investment amount, we are likely to see a narrowing of the gap between a TEA and a non-TEA investment. So it may not be that significant that you're non-TEA. One of the bills, I believe it was Goodlatte's, basically the bill would start off with $650 for non-TEA and $600 for TEA. So you only got a 50 grand saving with the TEA, which actually makes it workable, quite frankly, to have a restriction on TEA, because the difference at the end of the day does not adversely impact the program. The other thing that concerns me, however, is that the possibility of rural set-asides. The waiting line problem for China is serious, and the possibility of rural set-asides is real. But the critical question for me is that if these visas are unused, that there would in fact be a rollover into the regular program so that the situation with regard to the waiting line does not get longer. So those are a few of the key things that I anticipate we'll see in the extension bill. Now, I want to make one other kind of technical point, which is really just a Bernie prediction, and I don't have a crystal ball. But what I do know is this. The administration has numerous priorities: budget, family, infrastructure, health. They have to take care of all those very, very important issues, number one. Number two, they are currently focused on interior enforcement and border restrictions. Therefore, reforming employment immigration, which is what EB-5 is not their highest priority. And I think there is a possibility that we'll actually get another short extension, no changes through till September 30th. Now, Michael, you heard it here first. That's my personal view, that we're going to get another extension with no major changes, but that before September 30th, we will see all these significant changes being enacted, because the R's are definitely going to do something. But in terms of priority, they have a lot of other things on their plate right now. So it may be that we get a short extender, but the 4 or 5 issues that I mentioned, TEA, set-asides, are reality that we're going to see probably before the end of this year.
Okay, Bernie, I'd like, and by the way, we hear the prediction there. It sounds very possible. We've seen so many extensions before without change. I need you to touch on two topics right now of importance to the, especially the mainland Chinese community. One is the backlog retrogression. Can you talk to us about what you're hearing? What are the current timelines, do you think, for an actual mainland Chinese person to be adjudicated and get entry into the United States?
Michael, what I can tell you is this. The current waiting line went from 33 to 34 months. It has not yet hit 3 years. So we get this question every day. How long is it going to take to process my employment-based second preference case? How long will it take to process my family second preference case? And what we look at is we look at the visa bulletin, which is published every month by the State Department. Google the term visa bulletin, study it in order to understand. This waiting line has gone from 0 for Chinese-born nationals in April 2015 to almost a 3-year wait. So in the last 2 years, we've seen this waiting line go from 0 to approximately 3 years. And I am being asked to predict what is it going to be like based on the large number of pending cases. And here's what I'm telling clients. Be absolutely sure that the waiting line will go to 4 years and maybe 5 years and maybe beyond. But there are doomsday people saying, oh, it's going to be 8 years, it's going to be 10 years. I do not believe that we can predict that far ahead, understanding that we have a new Congress, a new president, who, in my opinion, is going to support this program. And here's why I think President Trump is going to support this program. President Trump is in favor of job creation. This program does job creation. This program, with 40,000 petitions filed in the last 20 years, has brought in $20 billion, primarily in terms of construction, job creation, some of it infrastructure. This is exactly what President Trump stands for, with not one penny spent by the US taxpayer. So it is my view that President Trump will support this program and allow it to continue. How exactly they will resolve the issue of numbers, I believe that if they don't resolve the issue of numbers, we have a serious problem. But because I believe President Trump is going to keep this program alive, Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, has also a developer, has already done a $50 million New Jersey-based Trump-branded project. They know this program. They are very familiar. They are developers. And with $20 billion currently invested in the last 3 years alone, and remember, Michael, that's only about 1/3 of the capital stack. So effectively, we have some $60 billion worth of construction implemented in the last 3 years because of this program. How much do we have altogether? I don't know. Maybe it's more than 100 billion. But the bottom line is that I do not believe President Trump is going to collapse this program. And in order to keep this program alive, they have to provide relief. They could do this by not counting derivatives. Instead of having only 3,000 investors a year, they could simply say, okay, let's have 10,000 investors a year plus their family. Problem solved. Point number 2, they could take 10,000 visas from the lottery program, but I think they're going to kill the lottery program. So maybe that won't happen. So again, nobody knows what's going to happen. But what we do know is that these folks who are making the decisions, Jared Kushner is critical. He's handling all the foreign policy stuff. Trump understands development. New York has so many EB-5 projects. There are numerous powerful senators, such as Senator Schumer, Democratic Minority Leader, Senator Flake, Senator Cornyn, many other advocates who are powerful, who want this program to succeed. So again, Michael, I'm the eternal optimist. We do have the potential for a disaster if they don't do anything. But my prediction is that the waiting line will stretch out to a few years. Oh, by the way, one other little one. There has been a bill proposed to remove the per country limitation. So China and India get the same quota as Belgium and Liechtenstein. If that bill goes through, actually the Chinese waiting line will probably come down to 3 or 4 years but everybody else will also go up to 3 or 4 years. So there are numerous ways to solve this issue. It is a critical issue, but the good news is I believe it will be solved.
And those are all excellent points. I think many would agree with you. And in fact, I've even heard suggestions that they may privatize some of the aspects of the backlog. He was speaking about the Federal Aviation Administration, perhaps privatizing some of that. So perhaps to, in fact, accelerate processing times, they may bring in some outside contractors. Who knows? I think all your points are excellent. I want to talk about very briefly the Grassley-Feinstein bill, but before I do, a concern from China. I know you work with a lot of Chinese clients. So we had earlier in January this issue with this lady from China, some sort of a plead of a fraud case involving funds coming in. There was some question. And this goes to a broader point that we have heard that the mainland Chinese officials are more concerned about capital outflows, and they are more heavily scrutinizing their citizens who are applying or transferring funds from China to the United States. And we've heard cases, in fact, where the regional centers have had difficulty in obtaining funds from their Chinese investors. What are you seeing regarding the Chinese government involvement and funds transfers from their citizens?
Well, Michael, there has been a lot of publicity about this issue. To be direct, ever since they canceled the Bank of China Yogathon program in 2015, we have heard stories about the problems of taking money out of China. One of the most popular things that was done, and I don't advise people in terms of currency exchange, it's not my area, but the most popular one, because it's 50,000 a year, was the so-called family and friends methodology, where they would have 50,000 sent out by various friends and then aggregated. So the Chinese government is now wanting its nationals not just to say, oh, this money is going to be used for investment. They want to make sure that when you apply for your $50,000 transfer, that you are absolutely telling the truth as to the reason for that transfer. So that is certainly an issue that's on the radar screen. It's certainly something that may well impact the program. However, I'm going to be a little bit optimistic and assume that this may have more to do with trying to prop up the RMB. The Chinese government is concerned that the RMB was dropping too much. So if that is the main reason and they are able to stabilize the RMB, we might see less impact on this issue. I think, again, to me, the Chinese government wants to encourage foreign investment. We see the Chinese investing all over the world, not just the US. I think that legitimate investment abroad is something that is consistent with the Chinese government. But I think that some of this emphasis is really on what I'm going to call a temporary stabilization of the RMB. But I'm hardly a currency specialist. I'm just speculating that we've had this issue on or off for a few years. And my feeling is it may be a transitory issue. And 2 months from now, we'll be hearing some different news.
Good. I want to remind our listeners, if they have any questions for Bernie, obviously excellent advice and feedback from what he's seeing related to the program and his clients. Our number is 917-421-9919. Again, 917-421-9919. Bernie, I'm going to, in our final moments here, I'd like to ask you about this Grassley-Feinstein bill. Why was it even introduced? What do you feel was the purpose? Do you think it's got any legs? What's the reaction on the Hill?
Well, look, Chuck Grassley is the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Dianne Feinstein is ranking Democrat. So this was introduced, quite frankly, as a scare tactic to make sure that everybody comes to the table. In my opinion, this is a negotiating ploy. You've put up one bill. Actually, Mike, I think there's probably 5 or 6 bills you can put up that have been introduced. This is not the law of the United States. It's being misinterpreted. Basically, what they're doing is they're saying, hey, guys, you want to play with us? You want to keep delaying? We have put, Chuck Grassley's position is we have put real live proposals to you guys. You keep trying to block them. Now, you're going to come to the table because otherwise we're going to kill your program. And quite frankly, it's worked. It has worked. These guys know what they're doing. And it is because of this bill that I have predicted we will see legislative changes. I can't tell you which bill, whose bill, or where because it doesn't exist yet. But the good news is it's being drafted and it's being commented on and it's being moving around. Just so you know, right now, there are various coalitions. There's a bill being marked up that's being circulated. And I gave your listeners some of the juicy tidbits that are in that bill. We've seen them because they've come from other bills, such as Goodlatte's 5992 and various other bills. So basically, I actually look at this and I say, you know what? This is a good thing. This is a good thing because it's telling everybody, stop playing games. You better compromise on TEA, which is the single biggest issue. And as a result of this, Mike, we're going to have new legislation either before April 28 or before September, which will actually revitalize the program and give us a positive future for the EB-5 program. So I'm all optimistic here, Mike.
Right. I can definitely, we see when we go to the conferences and we speak with people who are very in deep with this program, we see there is a tension. There is a tension between those who are advocating for increased transparency and what they call the integrity measures, and those who want no change. But I think you're right. This bill has finally gotten people to the table because those who have been advocating for no change may see that, in fact, if they don't compromise, there could be the termination of certainly the regional center program. We will be discussing with experts in the next few weeks both the issues related to fraud. In January, I think it's unprecedented. We've had the highest number of actions, both by investors and regulators, concerning fraud. We've had people finally actually pleading guilty, going to prison, or being sentenced to jail sentences. So we're seeing criminal and civil actions at the highest rate we've ever seen. So I think I would say it's fair to say there needs to be some more integrity measures adopted by the industry, whether it comes to regulation or we introduce this ourselves. But there is clearly a need for greater oversight and greater transparency. Certainly, I can see that as an investment advisor. We see very little transparency in the program, and it's led to a number of investors losing their funds to unscrupulous operators. And I think it just benefits the industry as a whole if some of these measures were introduced. But I mean, we remember last year, the Leahy-Grassley bill, and that we thought was going to be passed, and it ended up getting killed. So to me, it certainly seems like there is a reluctance from some in the industry to push forward integrity measures.
But Mike, the point here is that the stumbling block was the TAA issue. Okay, I believe that the TAA issue was critical, and I think that we are now at a point where there is a solution to the TAA issue. Number one, we're going to see the restriction, but the impact of not being a TAA is not as serious if they can keep the, I guess they use the word delta, if they can keep the delta at an acceptable level, meaning the difference between TAA and non-TAA. So as for the integrity issues, this is good for the program. The reality is it's going to give confidence to investors that the US government is out there trying to protect them. And, Mike, more integrity measures, good. Setting up a better infrastructure, a better framework, good. But, we actually have pretty strong laws right now with regard to fraud and embezzlement. And I think what we are seeing is the warning is out. You guys think that this money is your private bank to spend? You better wake up, guys, because you're going to end up in jail. So, integrity measures are happening as we talk and as you're showing on the screen already. So regardless of whether this bill goes through or not, I think the government is giving a very clear indication that fraud is over. And Mike, one more little sort of breaking piece of news, which you haven't heard about yet, is the first FDNS investigation took place yesterday. Fraud detection and national security is now visiting projects. It's happened. And what I'm telling you is, regardless of all this legislation and media hype, the US government is currently taking steps to clean up this program. And you showed me the regs. The reason those regs were proposed is because Congress couldn't get its act together. So USCIS itself was moving towards cleaning the program up. The SEC, the various agencies are moving towards making this program well. So the overall picture and presentation that I'm giving is that good things are happening every day. This program, we get a skewed perspective from the media, but what's going on is investors are filing every day. Regional centers are raising funds every day. Jobs are being created every day by, the dozens, the hundreds. What people need to understand is the overall picture of a program that is actually working. And the efforts of the US government today are already effective in terms of improving, who's that ugly guy you've got up there?
Very, very handsome guy here.
Okay. Seriously, Mike, we have a program that works, that's good for America. And I, again, am internally optimistic that the new government is absolutely going to crack down in many areas relating to undocumented. My personal view is that it's misguided, but at least for the purpose of today's program, which is focused exclusively on EB-5, I remain fairly optimistic that this program will continue. This program will be good for America. And I pray that the other endeavors are done in a humanitarian way, which unfortunately we're not seeing at this time.
I agree with you as well, Bernie. Obviously, in any program or with any industry, there's issues. I think the industry, well, we know this from when you've been around forever and ever. You've seen it from the beginning. Since I've come in 2008, I've seen a tremendous change. The program has become more institutional, more financial controls. are coming into place. I was at the NES Innovation Summit 2 days ago, and we can see all of the service providers coming in, providing more in ways in terms of compliancy, transparency, compliance, and reporting to the investors and the regional centers. So I agree with you. I think the future is bright. I hope you're right that the people can come to an agreement on the TAA issue, and we can advance this through Congress so that we do make the program permanent. And obviously, we want to give comfort to those who are investing that their investments, while at risk, certainly aren't at risk or subject to malfeasance. And I think that, from my perspective, I have seen an improvement. I agree with you, and I hope that can translate to bigger visa numbers for EB-5 and greater growth for the industry.
Michael, one of the things I want to mention is I don't remember when I first met you. It's probably 5 years ago or more, but you know, you're the guy who really brought in the whole concept of due diligence. I mean, I have been doing these cases. I think I filed my first case was in 1993. It was actually a troubled business case, and I always like bragging that I got an approval in 48 hours, in 2 days when I filed it, because they didn't know what these things were, and it was brand new, and they expedited the approval because it was a troubled business and jobs were saved. It was actually a snowboard company that was struggling, and that company was saved. So it's been a long time, but you know, many of us immigration lawyers, we're not financial specialists. And I think the industry has finally come down to realize that this is all about investment, and that we need professionals such as yourself who have a long background and extensive knowledge. And I think we did a couple webinars a few years ago where, boy, you really opened my eyes in terms of what due diligence means and how it's done. And I just think of where we were then when I'm listening to you and I'm like, wow, what is this guy talking about? And now that's become the mainstay. People understand that this is about investment. This is surely the green card is what drives it. But the essential vehicle is the investment. And there's nothing more important than doing due diligence on the project, understanding the risk factors. And, you know, my hat's off to you. I'd like to say, and all the others, but the honest truth is, like, there's only one or two people I know who really understand this industry, and EB-5 Invest, and your company, has been a leader in this arena and has, quite frankly, done more to transform the industry into one of transparency and compliance. So I know you're the guy who taught me this stuff and opened my mind and eyes to what's going on. I just deal with the visa stuff. I deal with the technical immigration processing, but really this is about investment. This is about understanding the risk factors, and boy, your team have done a lot to educate us in this area.
Good, and Bernie, I can't thank you enough for that. I appreciate your kind words. And I'm going to throw it back to you. Bernie, you're one of the leaders, certainly the thought leaders, as well as I know you're sometimes in front of the scenes, sometimes behind the scenes regarding policy and initiatives and guiding the Hill as to what the legislation should be. I want to end this by letting everybody know how to get in touch with you. Obviously, your profile is on the portal, EB-5Projects.com, your phone number, your complete information, website, your the email, blog, so on, your LinkedIn profile. Bernie, I can't thank you enough. It's been very informational. I know we'll have you on again in another program, hopefully before April 28th, when we do hear of what the changes may be, and I'd like to get your feedback. But I wanted to thank you for joining us today, and I want to remind the audience that if they do have any immigration-related questions, to please contact Bernie at his office in Santa Monica. And Bernie, again, thank you very much for being on our show today.
Michael, absolute pleasure. I certainly look forward to coming back and updating your listeners, and keep on educating us all on how to choose a good project, because I tell everybody that 95% of the analysis is selecting a good project. Only 5% is choosing a good immigration lawyer. So you're the important guy around here today. Thank you for all the flattery. But I tell everybody I'm the least important part of the process. It's really about choosing a good project, and hopefully you'll have a lawyer who's, what I tell my clients is, I'm never going to lie to you. I'll tell you the truth at all times, whether you like it or not. And a little bit of in-your-face attitude. But I'm number 2 or 3 in the process. You folks who do the due diligence on project selection are absolutely number 1. And I got to tell you, Mike, I tell that to every single client I talk to. So keep on doing a good job, educating us, telling us which projects are worth investing in and which ones are the ones we should stay away with. And I'm going to end this with one final little tip. There was a project, one of the originals. There were 5 or 6 original regional centers. One's called Jay Peak in Vermont. And I remember you telling me years and years ago to stay away. And I'm proud to say not a single one of my clients had ever, and I've never filed a JP case. Now, I don't know how you got that intuition. You explained it to me at the time. I don't even know if I can remember. But that warning that you gave me saved potential clients of mine from complete disaster, because many of those people are in terrible trouble. So, Mike, that was one of the examples of the type of advice and work that you give, which turned out to be 100% true. And none of my clients, not one. And I was smirking because so many lawyers have come up to me and it's like, oh, I got 10 investors, I got 20. What is it that what am I gonna do here? Sorry, my phone. So I'll ring myself off at this point. But that was brilliant advice, Mike. I really appreciate it. I owe you big for that one.
No worries. I'll collect next time I'm in Santa Monica. Bernie, thank you again for coming on our show today. We'll have you again. You're going to be a frequent repeat guest on our show, and I can't thank you enough. And I want to tell all of our listeners, thank you for tuning in. If you do have any immigration-related questions, please let Bernie know. All of his contact information is there. And I will say goodbye to everybody. We'll see you next week. Thank you very much.
Take care, Mike.